Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Let's talk about the radionic industry, if there is such a thing. Well, radionics, of course, has been around since its original structure in terms of how we show it today. I mean, it really goes back thousands of years of using subtle energies, working with this particular type of energies. It got into its, and there has been even kind of primitive machines back in different ways. People rubbed sticks together, poles on the ground. There's all sorts of things people did, which is kind of the same process. What happened is Albert Abrams, who was a medical doctor, he was a doctor, but he was a medical doctor, basically a genius, who graduated, I believe, medical school when he was 18 or 16 or something. And because he graduated, he then had to go to Europe and spend a few years training over there at I believe, a German university. Albert Abrams was a Jewish German. His family was very rich in San Francisco, mercantile family. And so he got into that and certainly was one of these typical Jewish, highly I don't know what you call it, intelligent, but they certainly know how to learn and repeat information to pass tests. And this is what everybody is judged on. Certainly, this is just another instance of that. And of course, anybody who knows how difficult learning Judaism is with all the studying you do, I think that's part of the reason we can do this. But there certainly is a high level of education here. But Daddy was very rich, so he had money and was able to do this. And so he did finally get into all this stuff, and I'm not sure why he got into this or not. I mean, all of this stuff is a little difficult to figure out, and of course, all the information is being lost now as well. But regardless, he made several different machines, and he came up with some. And you got to remember, this is pre-drugs. So if you're a doctor in pre-drug time, it's not that you studied everything with the pharmaceutical companies. It's the fact is that if you're going to heal somebody, how are you going to do it? So people had all sorts of therapies, and we've lost this. We've lost the fact that people used to be, go to the desert, you have asthma, go to the desert for 6 months. Go by the ocean. Try this device. And this is when everything was just happening, including electricity. There was a lot of electricity machines which just would put some electric shocks through you of different levels. And this was thought to help you, and I'm sure probably did help a little. You're stimulating things, but of course too much electricity certainly in itself is probably not that much help. But there were no drugs. There were no ways of treating people. So you did all sorts of different things, and this, unfortunately, as I said, has been lost, and it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that we've lost let's not be so dependent on drugs. Isn't there better ways to do things? And of course, there's no interest in that because everything is drug-based. And, there's a logic to this. Take a pill wherever you're at in the world. It's much easier than sending a machine or something else over there or having a skilled operator. So I understand that. But like everything in life, I think it's a synergistic blend. There certainly should be things that help you. And it should not all be drugs. And the problem is all these drugs, even when they copy natural products, all tend to have some great, great, terrible side effects that affect a lot of people, make them sick, kill them, etc. So drugs are not the only answer out there, although drugs are very effective and they have saved a lot of people's lives. From asthmatics to antibiotics, billions of people have been saved because of these, quote, drugs. But when drugs become the end-all and be-all, we run into the problems we have today. So, but before that, what did you do as a doctor? Well, that's a good question. What did you do as a doctor? Well, you sewed people up, you fixed broken legs, you did stuff like that. What else did you do? Well, there were very little medications you could give anybody. Most people weren't using herbs or anything else. There were some different types of narcotics and other things, but the bottom line is that people don't understand. This is all very, very new. This is not something that has happened recently. I mean, has happened recently, I should say, in terms of drugs. So nobody had anything. So Abrams came up with ERA, the electric reaction of Abrams. So he was investigating these things, which a lot of doctors did back then. They investigated alternative treatment things, and it wasn't chemical based. The pharmaceutical industry and chemistry in general was pretty new in the 1920s. You got to remember, electricity didn't even come on until 1880 or something. I mean, you're talking about, electricity was just coming on. People have no idea. We didn't even discover photosynthesis or how plants grow until 1960. 60. So it just shows you how far behind all the sciences are and everything else. And the scientists like to say how advanced they are now, but not really. There's a lot of research, a lot of information, and when they put it all together, it adds up to zero. But we have all these chemicals and all these things we're doing, and most of them fail. And of course, we still don't even have drugs that do anything very well. We don't have really any drugs that cure anything per se. Some help the cures, antibiotics, other things, penicillin, things that will keep you alive, asthma medications, and so many other things that are very important to your survival of the people here. But unfortunately, it became the end-all and be-all instead of the step to cures. Now, anytime you get into medications, the legal definition of a medication is for the treatment of the symptoms. Medications do not state they are a cure. And I think that's where we got wrong here. So it's for the, a drug is for the treatment of the symptoms of whatever it may be. And of course, that's being relatively honest as well, because none of these drugs cure anything. And they are needed as a stopgap method. But as I said, they become an end-all and be-all. There are no cures. And if there are, they want to charge you $800 for a pill. And those kind of people should be rounded up and hung as traitors to the human race. And that's what this society tends to lack. People that are committing crimes against humanity that aren't given the proper penalty. So the whole idea is that that's the way it is. So he came up with radionics to so the whole idea is it came from there. His boxes are nothing like the ones we have today. People are still copying that stuff. And nobody knows the industry. There's nobody who's written any books on Abrams per se in terms of a history. There are no movies on Abrams, Drown, all the other people who are medical frontier people. We did have years ago, I think they made a film on, what was it, Yugo's oil? What was that oil that this guy made and saved his child or whatever? They made a movie on that, and he got a lot of publicity because he was a rich guy who knew how to do that stuff. But this whole area of work, which falls under the guise of higher consciousness healing, etc., has been discredited by the criminals out there that are sent out as bulldogs to attack. And these criminals, of course, have infiltrated every aspect of the radionic industry. So there's absolutely nothing by all the major people, and some of them have done very well and been around for 30, 40 years, that have ever proved anything. What we do have is the older these people get, they keep dying with no assistance from their machines, and so with their relatives. As Peter Kelly died young, I saw a picture of him recently. I've never seen a picture of him before, but he was like 350 pounds. Did he eat the radionic machines? I guess he kind of didn't figure out how to use them. And has been doing. He claimed to have worked with Hieronymus. He lives in the same state, which is a problem in itself, being in one of the most closed-minded and despicable places on earth, which is Georgia, USA. And his son has taken over, apparently, making the same old crap. There's nothing new. It's the same machines that have been up there for 40 years. There's no new information, no new anything, and certainly no new proof. And again, you can't go out necessarily, but it would be nice for a radionic industry to try and get FDA approval to do all sorts of tests on these things. But the bottom line, there's absolutely no information agriculturally or anything else. And Hieronymus tried to do some of this stuff, but was never able to do it either. He got under harassments, etc. But in his term of making instruments and everything else, which was basically just changing some minor things in his unit and this alloptic energy using prisms, etc., which I was told by a person who worked with him was just put in there for the reason of the patent. That it meant absolutely nothing. And alloptic energy, as Hieronymus has stated, is non-electromagnetic based, and which anybody in their brain would know that, who's worked with radionics. It's not electric based. It's not electromagnetic. There certainly are electromagnetic energies, and I'm not saying that's not the case, but it's not electromagnetic. It's not, quote, frequencies. The informational energetic fields that make everything in life make frequencies. So, and of course, frequencies are apples and oranges. These are actual Hertzian frequencies, otherwise known as Rife machines. Hulda Clark had her frequency machines, Bob Beck, etc. Well, these are putting frequencies into your body, which apparently seem to do have good effects. But again, we just don't know anything there either. You know, as long as something is illegal, nobody's going to spend any time and money in doing it. Now, it isn't because you can practice radionics if you're a physician in certain states, because you can practice anything you want there. But these people are harassed and everything else by other doctors. But getting back into the industry, that's just a mess. There's basically nobody teaching radionics that you can correspondence go to, or ways that are easy. The only official school is in the UK, and you have to physically go there, even though they do have some classes you can take online. They do have a monthly publication, and they seem to be relatively sincere, but the bottom line is they've really never done anything, and they don't have facilities, and of course they don't have any money. But if you don't grow to the point of having enough people, then you're never going to get anywhere. And they really don't. And I don't know anybody who's ever been contacted by the UK group saying, hey, you're a radionic person, join the club, why don't you get over here, why don't we talk, you have any information? Nobody's done this, nobody reaches out. And and I don't really know what they're into or not in general. I've had some contact with them. I don't like to join any organizations because they're not really on the same wavelength as I am, but it would be interesting to see what they're doing, and I will report back on them. There's no other organizations out there that are radionic organizations of that nature except Radionic Tech. There are people making instruments, and they're all horrible stuff. The radionic industry, about 25 years ago, was taken over by Satanists, otherwise known as Carl Hans Welch, who came out with his ridiculous orgonite, which is horribly toxic, does nothing except kill you, and started that craze, which is the only new development in radionics in general. So the bottom line is that that's what happened. The entire satanic community of evil practitioners, leading the charge with them is a guy called Charles Casamato, who I worked with years ago and published some of his books, has been feeding them this destructive garbage technology. And these are the people that are out there selling stuff, and this is where the radionic industry is went. Everybody else in the industry are corrupt, rotten people as well. There's not a single organization other than Radionic Tech who is independent or doing anything of value. Plain and simple. They're all corrupt. They're all doing things badly. As I've mentioned, there's government agents writing books that to push you off the track, who make outrageous claims while they are sick themselves, and it goes on and on and on. They have nothing to back up anything they said, even though they've been around, some for 40 or 50 years, like the Peter Kelly group and even the SC5 group. Where is the beef? There's a lot of money in their pockets, but they're not really doing anything with it. And when you look into the details that a top SE5 instructor dies of cancer, or you have Peter Kelly who begs for money to cure his wife of breast cancer and also dies pretty young, well, I mean, what's going on here? I mean, we have to have some proof. If this is what you've done, you've got all this information. So the whole idea is that this is an industry of just a bunch of very disturbed and evil people. And of course, this is done deliberately. There are unlimited funds for anybody who wants to stop something to send infiltrators in. So if there's a group of more than 3 people, you can guarantee if there's 4, the bottom line is that, so if there's more than 3 people, or basically if there's more than 2 people, you can guarantee that one of them, believe it or not, is some sort of implant harassment person, because there's unlimited money, and all of these organized crime people are involved in harassment of people. They're paid, they're allowed to do their thing, and it's plain and simple. There are no law enforcement, nobody does anything, they're all criminals. That's the reality of the world, whether you want to believe that or not. So if you start an alternative healing group, I mean, we saw this many, many years ago for those old timers who had dinosaurs like me. Remember old Ross Perot? And what happened with Ross Perot, the third party? Because, you know, a lot of people basically agreed with him or wanted an alternative party. And they had all sorts of meetings, and people actually got into fist fights. There were fist fights. There were screamings and yelling. This wasn't a group of people working together. These were infiltrators going in to break up that organization because the powers to be feared it. And that goes with everything. So everything's a big corrupt sewer. Nothing gets done. We spent $100 billion on drug enforcement to chase $20 billion in drugs, and it never, ever. Why doesn't it work? Well, it doesn't work because it's all corruption. So the bottom line is that for one reason or another, radionics has been targeted. I believe there's a powerful and fearful aspect of all this stuff, that this is not really wanted in the average person's hands. So they support people that have crap technology, pseudo-computerized garbage. You have people that basically have 80-year-old machines that are based on Hieronymus. And you have all the other junk out there, and it's pretty much all junk. There's really nobody out there making anything of interest. The big push as of recently, and I've probably been 15, 20 years, is the move over to computerized electronic things, which, again, if they are putting out any kind of electronic signals or frequencies, they are not radionic machines. But this is the big push. The well-known manufacturer, Bruce Copen, once he died, everything went over to this digital nonsense. And of course, around the world, people are making digital machines, which basically seem to be nothing more than number generators that are supposed to do something. Now, we're testing some of these now, and we will get back to people. I have acquired a nice little machine, which claims to have some validity and been used for a while. And we'll get back to people on this kind of digital stuff. We don't like to pushy the buttons and look at the numbers like a calculator. 9 times 9. Oh, look at that. The answer comes up. 18. 9 times 9. That's computer tech for you. So the point is that radionics in its entire nature is a very specific, difficult field that takes a person of high level understanding and training, and this doesn't exist out there. The bogus dumbademia idiots come into this and want to computerize it and build a bunch of crap. Now, these computerized machines are also extremely expensive. Bruce Copen, who always has beautiful machines, but these machines now can easily run you $5,000 to $10,000 for what? Now, they certainly are good-looking machines. They have some machines that are cheaper than that, I think down to a couple of grand. But I mean, they're very complicated multi-dials, which I think is just a farce. It doesn't really do anything. There's a lot of things with Copen stuff that I have investigated many years ago. And his electrical units, which run power into the unit, only thing that power did was light the on and off switch. It didn't do anything else because that's an idiot. No. So, push the power on, it's working. Well, that's not how it works because it's not an electric. Certainly, Copen was a very interesting guy. It would have been fun to speak with him and everything else. But the bottom line is that, and he wrote a lot of books on all sorts of things, you name it, hypnotism, everything else. So he's quite an interesting character. He did make attractive equipment, has been claimed, and again, who the hell knows? I'm trying to put together a book on all of this stuff so that we can document the radionic pioneers. And of course, again, this takes time and money. But, what happened to him? He died young again. I don't know why his company wasn't, I don't know if it was a sudden death, but nobody seems to plan when they have particularly a big operation from his. People claim that he would pick you up at the local airport in a Rolls Royce. So I guess radionics kind of pays, Dr. Thor. Well, it did for him, if that story is right. So I don't know if it's right or not. But apparently, the Copen machines and everything else have a hardcore, tiny group of people that are buying this. And they got $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 machines from the fraudulent Copen organization out of Germany, who is selling all this computerized crap. But, there's never saying that it does anything because it's illegal. Anywhere in the world to make medical claims, period. Even in England, you can't make medical claims. And you certainly can't do that in Germany where all the pharmacies are. So there's none of this stuff as any kind of proof that any of it works. And, this has been going on for 30, 40, 50 years now. So this is where we get into an industry that's just a bunch of junk. And there are a few people making machines around the world, particularly in India, which makes some machines. And, of course, they're all based on crappy, old, stupid technology, and they don't know what they're doing. People are making phone apps to do all this stuff. Well, you're getting back into and you're falling into the big trap of everything becomes this psychic thought form that do work to a degree. And if you have it in your phone, you're using it all the time. Well, this is typical psychic visualization. Does it do anything of great extent? Well, it doesn't. And the Indians can't make claims either. So the whole idea is that claims, can't you march people up that said all these things happening? It's just a big delusional moneymaker from a bunch of unskilled, untrained people that know absolutely nothing. And it's a disgrace to those people like myself who have I've spent 55 years basically studying metaphysics in general, starting off in the typical, at that time, Indian, Asian, yogic thought forms, which were very big at that particular time. That moved into all sorts of other things, into general practices of alchemy, quote, magic, and other things, which is nothing more than ancient science, into which I think a lot of Westerners, particularly myself, I kind of prefer using some sort of technology, meaning machine-based electronics. I think that that's the reality that we're in. We are humans, make tools. With tools, we make machines because we are imbecilic, weak species. Basically, a puppy can knock you down. So the whole idea is that we have to understand it. So who is in the industry of that? Who are they all around the world? Well, they're nobody all around the world. You've got one ignorant, untrained person after another. You've got people selling a bunch of garbage, making a lot of claims. You have absolutely no really official international organization that kind of tracks everybody, that try and gets everybody together to exchange information like regular science does. Now, that's why science is such this tight club and everything else, but you never get that from alternative people. If you talk to somebody, well, they're your competition. So and of course, since you can't make a lot of money in this field generally, everybody doesn't want to share with anybody else. And there's no neutral meeting ground. There's no people discussing technology. Nobody's talking about, well, what's in the guts of it? Well, I do this. What do you mean you do this and do that? What is making that happen? I've taken part in all these different instruments that are out there, and they're really a bunch of bogus crap. Some of them very expensive that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. They're basically a hot mess. Yet people market these and con people, and they certainly are far from automatic and far from advanced. They're just really a bunch of junk. And I guess, you can market, you can sell, what is the old saying? Sell refrigerators to Eskimos. Well, Eskimos do buy refrigerators, by the way. They got to keep stuff from freezing. Isn't that interesting? So the whole idea is that the bottom line is that all of this is done by a very unskilled, arrogant group of people who are afraid to exchange information. And I have found that every single person, recently I've now connected all the dots of every known person out there, is with only a couple, I'm not too sure, every one of them is connected to criminal agencies one way or another, and they are being manipulated. So it's just a fact. So, and they have done nothing, and they are the worst group of people out there, lying to you, selling you expensive stuff that just doesn't work, and they know it. So when we get back to all those things, what do we look at here? So that's the entire messed up, corrupt radionic industry. And the entire industry is like that. As you said, since Carl Wells got involved with it and fed all his satanic buddies all sorts of junk technologies. And the worst thing to come out of radionics is this orgonite, which every one that I have tested puts out horrible toxic energy. And even people that are using... not him directly, but other people using some of his formulas, put out terrible, terrible energies. And you can see that on YouTube. I have actual testings of these. These energies spin counterclockwise and spin pretty strong, putting out this very destructive negative energy. And there's been a lot of people connected to orgone in general that have died, and actually a long list of them. And a lot of people I know who are sick using that technology. It's a bad technology. You should stay away from it. If you have any of those units, you should throw them away. It's like anything else in life. You had it, you tried it, get rid of it. To think that you want to keep something because you paid a few $100s for it that's toxic is kind of immature. So when we go through all these things, what does it do? What level does it do? How can it manifest? Well, you're never going to get any of that out of the industry, no matter who's in it. And nobody will even talk even the slightest. They're cowards. They're bought off. It goes on and on with them. And that's most industries or wherever we're at. So the level of corruption in the society is through the roof. It has been for a long period of time. And it's on every single possible level. If you think that this isn't important to people, well, you're foolish. If you think that certain little things happen while your local idiot police departments don't enforce on organized crime and people who are drugs, murdering people, bringing in sex slaves. Well, they don't bother with any of those people because they're paid off, but they have to keep their local scum busy, so they harass good people based on false charges. This happens all over the world, and it's been repeated for, probably since the beginning of time of how these things work. So the entire industry is made up of a bunch of people that know absolutely nothing of what they're doing. The fact that so many people want to move into computerization, computerizing what? What are you digitalizing that you're sending out there? These people have no idea. What energies are we talking about? That's why I stress energies and why I've moved away from most tunings and silly electronics. You still have to send your high-level thought forms into an electronic device to amplify it and broadcast it, but it works in a different manner. And if you don't restructure the energies going into these electronic devices, you're getting very poor results from it. And of course, those are all the things that I have personally developed. So you have to use a particular energetic disk to change the level of energy going through these amplifiers and transmitters, as I do. This changes everything and then allows that energy to be picked up. Now, does any of this stuff work? Is it all just fantasy? Well, the bottom line, there certainly is enough anecdotal data stating this. The problem with everything that works is that you're never going to get a very good proof of it because it's suppressed because you're going against billion-dollar industries. Just like we don't have free energy and we don't have medical cures. You think they're going to cure people when they can make trillions off of illness? Well, this is the sick nature of the human being. The same thing with energy. Until every drop of oil is taken out of the ground, and there seems to be endless oil, by the way, you've been told differently, you're never going to get alternative energy. And an electric car is not alternative energy. So you're just shifting the load somewhere else and all the things that go with that, particularly these horrible batteries they work on. Stupid tech for a stupid society. But we all have to keep this in mind of the reality that's going on out there, how anything of importance is suppressed and swept under the carpet, just like Tesla's technology was, just like many people who have found ways of healing. All of these people have been ridiculed, persecuted, and many of them even murdered. So the whole idea is that's the reality out there. You're going to go against billion-dollar companies, well, they're going to come after you. And they don't really care. They own everybody. And the bottom line is that none of the criminals are ever persecuted, arrested, or anything else. The only people that are harassed are the average people to keep the worthless, corrupt police departments in business acting like they can do something when they haven't done anything. I mean, we can't even have basic law enforcement to take care of drug problems and other things. Well, of course we can. Except you got to not turn the other back and stop picking up those envelopes from all the criminals that are paying you off. And that goes from the very state level to your assemblyman, your congressman, your mayor, all the way up to the head of all these so-called intelligence agencies and everything else. All your politicians are bought. Everybody's bought. This is the reality of life. Now, I tend not to look at these things negative. It's just that we should know this and understand the game that's going on and try and do what we can ourselves. So if you're going to come up with something that brings together, ends spending billions on pesticides, that is going to potentially bring you to high states of well-being, all these things that you could possibly do with this energy, and we're at the cutting edge of it right now, well, you're not going to be allowed to do that. You want to build a piece of crap computer that puts out frequencies, which is about as old as the hills. Well, of course you can make that garbage, and there's plenty of that garbage out there. Hewlett Clark did this with her cure for all cancers, who died at 73 from cancer. So the whole idea is that these frequency things are very, very sketchy in their own nature, but of course should be looked into. Frequencies are interesting. Frequencies, we know, work on certain levels, but do they work on other levels for other things? Well, we just don't know, and it's very difficult for anybody that has anything really out there to get going with it. So these things are quite astonishing of how even the smallest person is harassed by these people because they have endless money, and it's as simple as that. So you got to remember that all these people work for the bigger companies, ultimately the banks and the politicians and everybody else. So what happens is they just dump, claiming that they want to make more profits, but they spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars out there harassing, millions, probably tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, harassing all sorts of different people to ensure that the money is made by a select few. And of course, the radionic industry really typifies that. There's nothing but liars, deviants, and freaks involved with it. Organizations that appoint a high school PE teacher to run it. We have other people that just are totally and completely incompetent, that build the garbage stuff out there. And of course, it was inevitable that this technology would be picked up by evil people and then used by a whole class of satanic organizations led by Carl Welz, who was running one of the largest satanic groups out there. And people have no problems buying that kind of technology. And people at this day and age are now even indifferent to Satanism in general, because religion, of course, regular religion, or we could call it Jesusism, is Satanism. I mean, I've never met such cowardice scum as Christians. So the whole idea is that this is the reality that you work with, so nothing is ever going to change that way. But you, as a smart individual and have made this connection or are listening to this particular video here, is a person that has a chance to break the mold and do something for you. Because you've waited for somebody else. If you think government or some organization is going to help you, like the Red Cross, who pays $1 million to the head of it, that's his salary, plus $1 million in traveling, and they have a whole bunch of people under him that make $500,000 and more a year. Oh, that's a good organization to give to. And like most charities, they're set up to as a structure to pay the people to work there. It's a con job. 5-10% of the money goes to something of, quote, value, while the rest of it goes to run the organization, pay for buildings, pay salaries, pay all the other stuff, and of course, pay your big salary that runs it. So, and it's a political job, the head of the Red Cross as well. So that's people get that job as a political payment. I think Bob Dole's wife was the head of that at one time. And why was that? To get her lots of money. So the whole idea is, that's how all these things work, and it's never going to change. And to think that there's any credibility in anything out there, you are in a dangerous position. Every day, doctors murdered thousands of people for organized crime and to just make money off of you. Thousands. And they all doctors work for organized crime. It's as simple as that. Now, is that shocking to you? Well, it probably is, but I know it personally and have seen it. And I've seen doctors give narcotics to organized crime. And they did it in front of me because they know that I couldn't do anything about it. They were showing me they were in control. Now, if you don't get that, then you are a special kind of stupid. And that's, of course, where we're at. And if you think in any way that there's credibility in anything out there, any organization, any area of study, well, you're wrong, because it all boils down to money. And there aren't any people that are really honest out there. All they really care about is their money, ultimately, and their family, their children, their reality. It doesn't matter if you murder your next door neighbor's child. They don't give a shit about that. But they do care about the fact is their own little reality. So, and this is something that will never, ever end. And in every single industry, and we can look around the world of all the industries and what kind of criminals they are. Like Volkswagen, the largest corporation in the world, I believe, out and out thieves. They're the most rottenest criminal organization they could. They were fined billions of dollars. Their directors were arrested for the fact that they put together fraudulent emission systems. You don't expect Germans to know how to make emission systems, do you? It's all about beer. Crap beer. We make crap beer. So the whole idea is this is the kind of garbage that you run into the biggest criminal organization in the world. And they're everywhere, and people buy their garbage cars as well. So the whole idea, this is what goes on. And this is so-called regular business. And we could point to a whole bunch of companies like this that happen. Yeah, you know that all the major, Walmart, Costco, and everything else, all been caught paying tens of thousands of dollars to organized crime in Mexico so they can open their stores there. Oh, well, that was in the Wall Street Journal, people. Nothing that I say here, it can't be verified by going onto the net and looking it up. So these are facts. They don't come from my imagination or what I want to state out there. So all of these things are the reality out there. So it's always buyer beware, and it always will be. Can you trust anybody with their medications? Can you trust doctors? Can you trust lawyers? Can you trust law enforcement? You certainly can. And that's the sewer hell plane we're living in, and everybody should grab onto that. But one of the worst industries I've ever seen, filled with Satanists, incompetent gym teachers, government agents, and the lowest life possible, is in the radionic industry. So beware, people. Don't get caught up by these people. Don't be guiled or misled by their garbage technology, whether it's expensive or cheap. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they will not in any way prove to you, even some companies that have been around for 40 years, that they've done absolutely anything. And they're backed up, by the way, some of these companies who even working on the board of directors of certain so-called organizations that seem to be all based in that one machine making that money. So it's all a big con, and you have to understand that, as everything else is a big con in life, because there's very few things that isn't a con. But there certainly is interesting technologies out there, interesting empowerments, and we need to look beyond the poison medicines that they force down our throats, the corrupt governments, the sewer technology, the comic book religions that are out there, all of the nonsense that is perpetrated on everybody. Well, we have to look past that, and we have to find a new direction, and we have to support people out there that are doing that. So those of you who do want to support something, who do want to do something, well, make sure you join Patreon. Make sure you become an all-access member and support this organization who's really trying to get you the best possible products out there that work. And I test my stuff, and I've been doing it for 40 years. Everything that I produce works. Now, if you expect magic lamp technology, well, you're not hearing then right. So the whole idea is magic lamp technology doesn't work, isn't in existence. Can you do amazing things and change your life? Well, you certainly can, using the right technology, getting the right instructions, having the right follow-up, and having people that are there to assist you. You're not going to find that anywhere else, and you're certainly not going to find that from all these con artists and criminals that are in this industry. Horrible criminals, people who are heavily involved with evil practices, and of course, who else would these people be involved with? Well, they're involved with the federal government, who has no problem stating that quotes and information from the worst Satanists possible, and then writing books about it. And they're also, this person is infiltrated the Parcells program as well with his corrupt Satanists that he works with. Really, really sad. So that's how bad it gets, people. So trust no one ever. And that's a phrase to live by. Trust no one, period. Until next time.